You may not know it, but your song is competing against every other song in its genre, and it is competing in a loudness war. Today, I'm going to show you how to use LANDR's Mastering DAW plugin to make a great sounding track that is loud enough for streaming services without needing to become a master of mastering. Okay, so what the heck is mastering? So mastering is the last step in the song production process. And this is where you take a track that is already mixed, all of your instrumentals, vocals are arranged the way you want them, you've applied all of the effects, and you have essentially what sounds like a 95% finished track, and you just want to apply some gentle effects over the top, hence the master track, to give it that extra little 5%. And so when you're mastering a track, you're applying subtle EQ, compression, some other very small effects, and overall increasing the loudness of the track in order to get it to a level that is comfortable for people to listen to, because mixes are generally mixed at an intentionally lower volume, and then at the end you bring everything back up. Let's drill a little bit deeper into that discussion of loudness. So it is a natural human tendency to prefer tracks that are louder. Everybody likes to turn up the volume on their favorite track and let all of the other things going on in life melt away and just dive into the sound. In general, you want to make sure that you master your track at a level of loudness that is similar to the other tracks in your genre, because you're essentially competing for attention. Spotify uses a loudness normalization in their platform to make sure that all music comes out at a similar loudness level across all tracks. In the music world, there's a unit called LUFS, which stands for loudness units relative to full scale. That is kind of a way that we measure the loudness of a track. And Spotify's target is generally negative 14 LUFS. And this is applied anytime a Spotify user has normalization turned on, which is the default setting, and 99% of people probably listen to music this way. If your track is louder than negative 14 LUFS, Spotify will turn it down to get back to that benchmark it's targeting. And if your track is quieter than negative 14, Spotify will turn you up. But your track has to have headroom in order for Spotify to do this. While a quiet track can be amplified, that's only if the song doesn't already peak near 0 dBFS. If your song is both quiet and heavily limited, meaning the song doesn't have headroom, there's not much Spotify can do to turn up your track without introducing clipping or distortion. So with all of this in mind, it's generally preferred to master your track louder and let Spotify turn it down than to produce a quieter track and rely on Spotify turning it up. So I actually ended up using LANDR to master my own track buttons. So the first option LANDR gives you is a web-based version. You go to this mastering tab and you upload it and it automatically applies the effects, so like a limiter to bring up track volume, some gentle EQ and some compression, and you can preview it and then choose to distribute it straight from here. Or you can choose the second option, which is what I use to make my song, which is the plugin based mastering. And so you can get the LANDR Master Plugin Pro and download this and install it in whatever DAW you use. I happen to use Ableton, but it's compatible with a whole bunch of DAWs, and that gives you more control over how the master is applied to your mix, and you get to fiddle with some of the knobs and settings. So what exactly does that look like? I'll go ahead and show you right here. So this is the actual Ableton session that I use to create my song buttons. As you can see, if you're familiar with Ableton, so you've got all your instrument tracks, they each have their own effects and whatnot, which comprise of the mix. And then on the master track, you drag in this LANDR Master Pro plugin. And what ends up happening is, assuming your mix is all done and ready to go, you play the track into the mastering plugin. It'll spend a few minutes basically analyzing the track, and it recommends that you play the loudest part of the track, so the most instrumented, the fullest sounding part of your song, into the plugin. In my case, I think it took about 32 bars worth of music, worth of listening, for it to have enough. And then it takes a couple minutes while the master is processing. I've been told there's an AI that powers this, so basically I presume they trained it on a set of data, that being finished songs, and then it kind of learned what are the similarities among all of these different songs that make them sound good. What is desirable about the way these songs turned out? And so it learns that, hey, this is a house song, for example. What is appropriate for mastering in this genre? And then it applies some effects. And once that's all done, you actually end up with a default vanilla master, and you can play with the settings from there. So they give you 3 different gross effects here. You can apply a 3-band EQ to your track. There's some other things like presence I had to turn down slightly for my song because my mix was a little bit on the bright side, so I wanted to take out some high frequency. There's a de-esser, so sometimes the additional compression introduced by the mastering process brings out some of the sibilance in your track, so you want to take some of that out. The stereo field, I have a house track, so I actually wanted it to be a little bit narrower, a little bit more focused, which is common for this genre. You don't necessarily hear instruments being heavily panned in dance music a lot. And then some things on dynamics. So compression, I chose not to move too much. Character basically controls like, any of these knobs you can hover over and read the whole description, but basically controls how the compression attacks and releases. There's a saturation knob, and then loudness, which is the big one that we've been spending so much time about. You can turn the overall loudness of the track up or down, and it gives you an estimate in LUFS. And then one more really useful feature of this plugin are the gain match and the bypass buttons. The gain match will basically match the loudness of your mix level track, that is, turn your master track down, so then you can A/B compare the mixed version of your song to the mastered version of the song and get a proper apples to apples comparison without the levels being totally different. Remember what I said before about how people generally tend to think a louder song sounds better, even if there's nothing else different about it. So I would select the gain match button here, and then you can use this bypass to turn the master plugin on and off so you get a proper A/B comparison at the same loudness level, and you can basically assess, are the changes that I made in this master positive, or do I have to play with some other settings and kind of keep tuning it to get it to where I want. You can hear just how much more clarity the mastered version of the song has over the mix. It's really a pretty dramatic change, and it's just applying, like I said, that extra little 5%, 10% to get the song over the line and give it more of a pro sound. Some general tips for making a good mastered track. Like I said, I'm by no means an expert on mastering, but there are a couple pieces of advice that apply to anybody. First and foremost, you should be applying edits to your song that are subtle in the mastering process. If you find yourself making heavy edits, big scoops in the EQ, applying compression, things like that, that's a sign that there's a problem in your mix, and you need to go back and adjust that first before you decide to continue with your master. As I said before, the mix should sound like a 95% complete song, and the mastering phase is just for bringing it just that extra little bit over the finish line. The second piece of advice I can give you guys is mastering is your opportunity to make sure your song sounds good on all kinds of playback devices. You're presumably already going to be using studio monitors if you're mixing your song, or some kind of good quality headphones, but now is the time to try to experience how your song sounds on a bunch of other devices that people might hear your song on, even if it's not the optimal way to listen to it. So that means listening to the song on a pair of bad headphones. It means listening to your song on a car stereo, on your smartphone speaker, on your laptop speakers, on your portable JBL speaker. You really want to give yourself the opportunity to listen to the song on a whole bunch of different playback devices, and you can make adjustments to basically end up with a song that sounds good just about everywhere. You want to avoid optimizing it just for your studio equipment, because nobody else will listen to your song on studio equipment except us audio nerds. When I was producing my music, the way I enabled myself to listen across a whole bunch of devices in the production process is I took my mastered track and uploaded it to Google Drive, and that let me listen to it on my phone, in my car on my way to work, and a whole bunch of different venues, so I could just get a feel for how the song sounds out in the real world. If you end up using the web-based mastering option from LANDR, it's actually a little bit easier because your song is already hosted on their web service. Anywhere you could pull up that web browser, so on your phone, your laptop, you're able to listen to the song. So that makes it a little bit easier. This video is sponsored by LANDR, and the kind folks over there let me use their service in exchange for teaching you guys about how cool it is. If you're interested in trying out LANDR for yourself, I'll leave a referral link in the description down below, and using it will give you a 20% off discount off of any of their software subscriptions, including the mastering plugin, and will give me a small kickback for referring you to the service. It's just a way that you can support the channel and support the people who support this channel. Hopefully this has been enough information to teach you guys how to bring your tracks to the very next level, and nobody will struggle to hear your song on streaming platforms. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Later.